If you've watched me doing these talking videos in the past, you'll know that I basically share my journey of recovery from my childhood to now. I'm 54 years old. In fact, it's I can't believe how quickly time goes. It's not going to be that long before I'm 55. And anyway, there we are. I never in a million years would have thought I'd ever get to this stage. And I'm really rather surprised to find out what is still troubling me. And I have to say that, you know, the idea that recovery is a process, of course, is absolutely true. There is no destination. But it doesn't half piss me off. And I suppose this perfectionism idea that I have, that I can't possibly do videos and speak to people which shows what I see as the negative side to all this, or that here I am giving these talks about how I did this and how I did that, only to now do a video which shows that I still have issues to work through, fairly major ones, or at least they feel that way to me. Last year really shook my confidence, and I mean recently I've been very emotional this last few months. Things have not been that good. I say the last few months, I'm talking about the last year. But particularly towards the end of last year, where I basically had a bipolar episode, and I medicated myself rather than go to the doctor. My doctor did of course find out, because self-medication often causes more trouble. And whilst I was very fortunate this time that it didn't really, I ended up, now my doctor knows. And she also understands why I didn't go near her, because of fear of the sort of thing that happened to me in the past. Now, well, that sort of explains why I didn't go to the doctor. But what it doesn't really explain is the deep shame that I feel, I have to say I feel, not felt, over the fact that I first of all became manic, and then of course had the collapse, which always follows. But this time I didn't even get to enjoy the mania because I medicated myself. I saw it happening, so did John. And in fact John wasn't quite sure why I didn't follow through, i.e. why he wasn't really aware that I was medicating myself. Anyhow, as you know, last year we had the house remodelled, which was far, far more stressful than I would ever have believed. And we also got married, or did a civil partnership, and which I have to say was the happiest day of my life. It really was. I really understand why people say that about their wedding day. Because it did make me feel really, really good. It's funny though, I was petrified that John wouldn't say yes at the right time. I really thought he might not, even though it was our 31st anniversary that we did it on. There was still this huge fear inside me that he wasn't going to say yes. But of course he did. And then he handed over the house to me, legally. and he had no qualms about doing that. I mean, that was his idea, and I was really taken aback that he was going to do that, and he did. So both our names are on the deeds, we are both owners, and that means I have security. You know, if he drops dead, nobody can throw me out of the house. Nobody can sell it from underneath me. And the wills are tied up so that upon his death, his half of the house comes to me and vice versa. So anyway, we went through all that rigmarole. And as I said, the work that started in March last year didn't finish until March this year. And there was also a news story, which I'm sure the whole world has heard, about a celebrity in this country called Jimmy Savile, who it turns out was a serial paedophile and had been abusing children for very many years and getting away with it because both the police and other adults let him get away with it. It's really as simple as that. I found it very disturbing. And John found it very disturbing, and he was very concerned at the level of publicity that no matter where you went, no matter what you were watching, there it was. And he knew that it wasn't going to have a very good effect on me when I was already very stressed. Now, I had a couple of health problems, and my doctor told me that what I was going through was very stressful. And as a consequence of that, my disease was going to flare up. And, you know, I'd get all these health problems. My pain increased somewhat. And I also got other things which, to be honest, I can't really quite remember what now. And lots of people were telling me that what I was going through was really stressful. And I really sort of quite dismissed it. And I thought, what they're saying is that this is stressful because of the problems I have. And no, actually what they were saying was, this is very stressful, regardless of the problems you have. The problems you have make it worse. But of course, I don't know what happened, but, well, I do. The fact that I reacted in that fashion, for mania to start, you know, and manic behaviour and obsessive behaviour, I've truly believed that when I had my epiphany at the end of 2007, the realisation that I had not been abused because of who I was, but because of who the abusers were. I mean, that was just such a huge revelation to me, and it really did free me, and I felt so good. I mean, it didn't free me immediately, and I have to say that getting to that realisation was extremely horrible and painful, and I never ever want to go through anything like that again. But it did the trick, and the way that I dress now, and the fact that I don't rely on anybody out there to like me in order to feel good about myself, you know, I came to a good, strong sense of my own self. And like I said, I wasn't then at the whims of other people or what I thought other people thought, because of course that's a lot of it. You just imagine things and always imagine the worst. Although I don't like the way I said that, because that actually isn't quite true, because unfortunately what it also does is allow you to have relationships with people that you really ought not to be having relationships with. And by relationships I mean friendships. I know lots of people now take the word relationship to mean a sexual relationship between two people. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about friendships. And I had friendships that were anything but friendships. They were power games, really. And I was on the wrong end of it. Well, actually, either end of it is not good. But I had friends with people who didn't have my best interests at heart. I was easily manipulated, and the reason I was still in the friendships was because whenever I experienced doubt or thought that they were using me, I immediately fell down on myself like a ton of bricks and told myself off and say, how could you be such a wicked person and think such a thing, you know, when these are really kind, loving people and this is really down to you. Well, I no longer think like that, and it became, I didn't actually really have to do anything. These friends just disappeared fairly rapidly. I think they sensed the change in me and they knew that they weren't going to be able to get what they wanted from me when they wanted it. It was very painful to realise that I wasn't loved, but by these friends, but I had experienced far worse than that, so it really wasn't that bad. Anyhow, the point I'm trying to get to and avoiding was that I really believed that that was it. Colin was fine. That was the end of it, finally. I'd reached home. I'd found myself. And I would be able to handle everything that life threw at me from now on. And that obsessive behaviour and mania and all that would certainly never happen again. I mean, why would it? Absolutely no need for it to. And so last year was a big shock. A really big shock. Quite devastating to me. It's made me feel, well, just incredibly insecure, because I think to myself, well, shit, if it can take me by surprise like that, then I'm not safe from it. And what happens if life becomes really stressful? I mean, like, just for example, say John gets really sick as he ages. You know, and he's going to require more and more care and love and support from me. Never mind my own disease. You know, he's 12 years older than me nearly. And if my reaction to that is to go into a bipolar episode, well, that's you. So there's that. But there are also other thoughts and feelings that I have, and again, in relation to me, and this is to do with how I used to be in the past, and my behaviours, and the things that I did that I deeply regret, and, you know, the people that happened to get in the way. I never ever deliberately set out to hurt anybody, but I know that I did, and I know that, well, I just know that I did. And I also know that there are people out there whose memory of me would not be flattering, because I just was not a well person. You know, I didn't behave normally. I've talked about this with John, and we've talked about, and I spoke about it with my ex-therapist, that there's absolutely nothing that I could have done that would have changed anything back then. I could not do anything other than what I did. I remember, now I'm talking about a lot of the self-harm stuff. I remember the compulsion I felt to act out. And was there anything I could do to prevent that acting out? And no, there wasn't, despite me trying. And I tried, and I tried, and I tried. There just is no way that I could have done anything differently. And one has to bear in mind also, and this is where things get difficult for me, is that during the period of nearly 20 years where I fell under the psychiatric so-called care, a lot of the time I was completely not myself. I was doped up to the eyeballs with drugs like chlorpromazine and haloperidol, which I think in the United States is called Haldol, I'm not sure. But both of these drugs are absolutely vile. They're vile in what they did to me, in how they made me feel. And the only times I ever got violent was down to medication. I was on medication. And thank goodness my violence didn't. It was usually towards myself or items of furniture. But it still would have frightened other people when I went into one. And, you know, my periods in hospital where showing any kind of emotion was considered an aberration, and being held down and being forcibly injected in the bum with whatever drug it was they used to knock you out. And yet all I was trying to do was express grief. And do you know what has come to my mind while I'm explaining this? I thought, rather than stop him being angry at the people who treated me that way, you know, I've come to understand the way they work and the medical model that they use for people like me, which doesn't work. I mean, to explain why we're ill, they use a medical model, despite the fact there being absolutely no proof at all. And I know that some of you will get angry at what I'm about to say and you'll disbelieve me, but I heard it again on Radio 4 today from a noted psychiatric researcher. There is no evidence as yet to prove that any of these so-called mental problems have a biological basis. They may have a biological effect, but there's no proof that there's either genes involved or chemicals involved in causing it. I think sometimes people would rather think of it in those terms rather than face the fact that many people behave the way they behave because they're hurting, and you ain't got enough time or inclination to help us. And that's what it's about. Like I said, But what's happened within myself is now I think back. To be blunt, I feel deep shame about the Colin I used to be. I think about it. You know, the images are going through my mind as I'm talking to you, and they make me inwardly cringe. And in my less extreme times, I cringe when I think of what I allowed people to do to me and what I did to other people. I mean, in the attitudes that I held. And I basically need to find some way of not feeling that way about myself, of not feeling guilty. That's well, I think that's possibly part of it, but I don't know, I can't undo the past. Thing is, I now look at the past from where I am now, with the knowledge I have now, and with the new feelings I have now, from a place of wholeness, because I do believe that I am as aware as I can be today, and I have very vivid recall about how Colin used to be and how Colin behaved and how Colin thought, and like I said, I just cringe. And I want to shout at him, don't do that. That's not how it is. And I just feel so angry towards myself for putting myself in so much danger and for trusting the wrong people. And for adding to people's pain, because of course I knew other people that were survivors, and I could only share with them where I was at, and where I was at was not a good place at all. And I was still completely shut off from the feelings that I had. So if other people tried to express their feelings about it, I shut them down. Not knowing that that's what I was doing, but I still did. Dear. Do you know, I find it, in one way it's good that the subject of child abuse is spoken about today, and it's easier perhaps for people to bring it out of the closet, to bring it out from under the rug, to stop keeping it a secret. But the downside of that is that, I don't know, it seems to me people have become rather blasé about it. As if, I know what you can do. You just go to a therapist and 6 months later you're fine, you'll be as if it never happened. And I'm afraid that just isn't true. Not true at all. It'll never be as if it didn't happen. It will, I don't think people really understand the absolute enormity of this problem. The real damage it does to the psyche and to your sense of self, which takes a lifetime, if you're lucky, to overcome. I know plenty of people who died, who didn't overcome. They didn't live long enough to be able to overcome it. I could have been one of those people. Clearly I wasn't. But am I ready now? No. Not that I'll have any choice in the matter. I keep pausing because I'm in a lot of pain right now. Physical pain, I mean. Yeah, I'm going to have to stop.